Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant of Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, talk about the battlefield of business. What does that mean? Well, if you're in sales, wherever you are in a company, I'm going to give you a little insight. You're in sales. I don't care if you're the CEO, if you're the head of HR, if you're the chief revenue officer, it's pretty easy. If you're a BDR and SDR, hey, guess what? You kind of know your job title. You're in sales. But our job as business people is to make sure that we're not just selling whatever it is that our company sells, but that we're serving as well, that we're providing something to the people that we get to sell to, whether we're making a sale that day or not. And that means that we're on the front lines of our business because guess what? I don't care where you are in an organization, you might find yourself face to face with a customer one day. They could be calling in, you happen to pick up the phone, maybe you're out there in the field servicing whatever it is that your company sells, but you could be in that sales role where your job every day is to be face to face with a customer, either on their job site or on the phone or a mixture of both. And so on this battlefield, we need to make sure that we are not relying on hope. Just like the folks on the battlefields that I was able to serve on, they didn't rely on hope. In sales, hope is not the strategy that you want to rely on either. So, here at Bulletproof Selling, our mission, our mantra is that hope is not a sales strategy. So, we work each and every week with sales leaders across organizations to make sure that their salespeople are not relying on hope either. Out of that, they can sell more, of course, but more importantly, they can serve more. So, over the course of the last 100 plus episodes, we've been able to have people from Hall of Fame speakers, best selling authors, people that are helping sales teams. But probably my favorite group of people are those that are managing salespeople out there in the field. They're the sales leaders, the ones responsible for making sure that the people that they're overseeing are not just selling, but also serving as well. So, every one of these episodes, we get to build a sales system with our guests that makes sure that you can take that process, that system, and remove just a little more hope from how it is that you sell or how your team sells. Because out of that, of course, you will increase revenue. Your salespeople will become more efficient. They'll enjoy the work they do more because they'll know they're getting things done faster, better, more efficiently, and serving more people along the way. So it's my real honor and pleasure to welcome onto the show today a CEO who's been in the industry for I think most of his life, managing salespeople now. My pleasure to welcome onto the show Mr. Scott Hubble from nuCamp. Scott, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So, Scott, obviously, CEO of a company. You and I were chatting a little bit before the show. You're one of those folks that loves to sit up at the 30,000-foot level, as a good CEO does. But I'd like you to take us a little bit into your company. I want to find out, and for our listeners especially, what it is that you all do. You have kind of a unique business model in the industry that you're in. Not everybody has the model that you have, and not everybody has the type of salespeople that are really focused not so much on the tactics, as you mentioned to me before the show, but on the value, on the relationship. So, love to learn a little bit about you, what you do, and the salespeople that you manage.
Hey, absolutely. nuCamp is a very interesting company. I was asked several years ago, "Have you ever heard of a teardrop trailer?" No. What in the world is that? Well, now it's what I see every single day of my life, and I love it. So, we were founded in the middle of Amish Country, and today we are the world's largest manufacturer of teardrop trailers. What that looks like, what was the journey like? I was privileged to be introduced to a gentleman and meet him in his garage and slowly make some things happen. And through all that, we discovered we had the same heart, which was just a genuine level of care for people, products, processes. And I think that really sets a tone for everything that we do, how we were constructed. We started in a distributor relationship where I actually would go in and sort of serve as a middleman between the manufacturer and distributor. And so I sold them sales and did a lot of the marketing for that distributor. But as that contract ran out, we began to stand up on our own. It became just so large. That's when I had the opportunity to begin assembling a team. And I did not go out and say, "I need salespeople." I went out and I need somebody who's customer centric. I want the people that have been working in restaurants. If you've been working in a call center and you've been a hero there, those are the people that I wanted. Those are the people that I targeted. Those are the people that I brought in. And because
Mhm.
I feel like, number one, our core values, and number two, the heart of everything is people. So the foundation of the company, the foundation of the sales, which is obviously the engine of the company, had to be relational. And that continues today. Some of the shape and the form of the teams downstairs and sales and marketing and the customer experience, it's ebbed, it's flowed, it's morphed, and we feel like we found a real nice sweet spot. We only have a couple sales guys right now, um, but they know what the goal is, and the goal is focus on those relationships, and everything else is going to take care of itself.
Well, that's an amazing background, and I think you also mentioned that you have a father who's a veteran as well. So thank you so much for that. It was the folks that came before me that allowed me to do what I did in the Marine Corps. So always appreciative of that. And then the idea of relationship based selling, of course, is a pretty old model in sales. It goes back at least a couple of decades. But your folks do that in a way you mentioned to me before the show that's a little unique in that it's not so much about just driving relationship through a bunch of phone conversations, that they really develop their best relationships when they're face to face with the people that they're selling to. Talk to us a little bit about what that model looks like for you. Is it going out to the dealership sites? Is it bringing folks to you? How do they find that they are able to develop relationships face to face, especially in a world now we're coming off of COVID? A lot of people got used to the virtual thing, but I know we're just slowly getting back into that face to face. So I'd love to hear about what that looks like for your salespeople now.
Absolutely. The industry that we're in with RVs, it's very relational. It's huge industry, but it's pretty small when you start looking at the players and the people involved. And the general approach is actually to have, let's just say, four to a 12 or whatever the number happens to be, different regions across the country, and those individuals live there, and then they go and they service the different dealerships that the company works with. For us, we're a family-owned company. We're very, very big on culture. It's hard to keep a cadence with people that aren't here in the building. We've tried it on a smaller scale, and we just didn't have a great success with it. So what we've done is we said, okay, look, we're gonna be stationed here, and then we're just gonna be really intentional about how we interface with dealers. You talked about phone calls. Hey, that happens all day, every day, day, night, right? But long distance relationship, you may or may not have been in one as a youth,
Oh
and
yeah,
whatever.
unfortunately I have, and I know that they're tough.
But it's never as good as being with the person. So,
That's true.
with that said, we need to be a little creative because you know we have lives as well. These guys are not signed up to be road warriors per se. So level one, get out to the dealer. They are not
Mhm.
going to be able to visit all the dealers on a quarterly basis. That's sort of been the industry standard of forever. But what we like to do is say, hey, you know what? Number one, we'd like to connect physically with every dealer throughout the year. Number two, our stronger dealers multiple times. Okay, what do
Sure.
those platforms look like? Obviously, you mentioned Zoom. That is sort of like a half visit, right? It's not
Mhm.
quite, but at least you're seeing face to face. You can feel, they can see your expressions, so on and so forth. But then bringing them here to our campus, and we have a university we set up for training and investment, and really just communicating our story and our heart and what we want them to walk away with and represent. And then also we do dealer summits, and that gives us a chance to take a look at the top performers and invest even more so in those relationships. And the sales team, they are one of the very few people outside of the executive team to be part and parcel to every activity during that.
That's a great model. So there's a couple of things you mentioned there that is really important for listeners to catch on to. One is that you're not hoping that your folks get FaceTime with dealers. You're making sure of that. You're monitoring it. And I'll bet you, as a sales leader, you're saying, well, this is one of our top dealers, and no one's seen them face to face in 6 or 7 months. Like, this is a problem. We need to fix this now. And you've developed a couple of ways to deal with that. One is sending your people out there, which is a traditional model, and I think we'll dive into that in a second. But the other one is bringing them to you. And this is a great model for a small business to have. If you have a couple of people that you do business with on a regular basis, why not invite them to your location, make it worthwhile. And I was talking with some people in your company earlier, and they mentioned like a white glove experience. Like this is top notch from end to end, so they really feel cared for. You get to develop more of that face to face relationship, and that's a great way to do it. But I think for most of our listeners, it's going to be them going out to a job site. So I'd like to hear a little bit from you, because this is something that I think you've probably had to deal with a lot in your career. Where do you see salespeople relying on hope that that face-to-face visit that they're investing and their company's investing time and money in is going to yield a relationship? Because I'm sure a lot of salespeople out there just hop on an airplane or they hop in their car, they get to the job site, and they hope that things naturally progress from there. But where do you see salespeople relying on hope in that face-to-face visit is going to yield them the results of the relationship that they're after?
Yeah. You know what? When you talk about hope, the good part about hope is it's something you always need to be selling, right? It's a product, but it can't be part of your approach. It can't
Mm,
be, the legs that your presentation is built on. And then you're hoping for the relationship, you're hoping for the sale, you're hoping for all these things. Instead, it's being intentional and just making it
mm.
happen, setting the strategy and checking the boxes and being thorough and consistent, and the results will happen. So again, you're selling yourself, you're selling hope, you're selling optimism. That is the role of hope in sales. It is not in your approach.
That's amazing. So hope is not the role of your approach. It doesn't involve anything in your approach. I'm going to pull that out as a quote. That's a good one. Something we could all, I'm sure, better implement in our lives and in our sales. So let's build a sales system then, Scott, that will help any salesperson make better use of their in-person visits. Like you said, it's to have that plan ahead of time, to be intentional, to know that as I go in here, here are the things that I'm looking to achieve. Instead of just meeting with the person face to face, shaking hands, and talking about the weather for 45 minutes, let's actually build a relationship here. And of course, as we all know from dating, from being in relationships with spouses, that's much better done intentionally than trying to wing it, hoping that it happens. So as we build sales systems here at Bulletproof Selling, Scott, we use this acronym TRIM because we're trimming hope away from every single part of our sales strategy with each new system. And if your salespeople are focused on building better relationships through their in-person visits, this is really going to be impactful for them. So the T in this acronym TRIM that we use, because we're trimming hope, is the trigger element. So in the military, we always needed to know where on our battlefield plan does this system come into play? Does it happen when we're checking our gear before we roll out of the front gate? Does it happen when we're in the field? Does it happen when we're face to face with somebody who could be an intelligence asset? Or does it happen after the mission's done and we're back home safe and sound? So if I'm planning on a great system to make sure that I'm leveraging my in-person visits as much as possible to build that relationship, is the trigger element for me then before I get to the job site? Is it when I'm kind of mapping and planning strategy in my head when I'm in the comfort of my own office? Or is it right before I'm face to face with the prospect and I'm on the job site but haven't gotten out of my truck? Where do you think a good trigger is for this system for salespeople?
Well, look, it's absolutely on the front end. Preparation is
Mm,
everything. However,
okay.
as the relationship strengthens and deepens, you're going to have to make those calls, like let's say in the heat of the battle, where you weren't able to prepare for it correctly. You didn't
Mm,
know what was coming up. You didn't know, they didn't share with you what's going on, what new dynamic they have going on that's affecting the relationship. So it's all the above, but when you get started, and even when you're in it, you have to be preparing all the time.
mm. No, that's amazing. Now, I definitely want to make sure that we capture as part of our process, which is coming next. So I'm so glad you brought that up. The idea of keeping track of the things that might have changed, because that could redirect everything that you talk about. If their business is experiencing a massive downfall, they're going to be purchasing not necessarily less, but differently. And that's something that we want to be aware of. So that's a great point. So I love this trigger element of taking care of it on the front end. And this is the beauty of systems for us, guys. The idea being that we take the time on the front end to make a plan so that we can be more present with the people that we're speaking with when we're face to face. As we're pouring time and resources into getting to a dealership or getting to a job site, I don't want to be anything but fully present with that person. So if anything else is spinning around in my head, like the questions I'm supposed to ask or the changes that I've seen happen in the industry that might be affecting what we're about to talk about, all of that's going to affect the presence that I can have, the relationship that I can build, the value that I can deliver. So definitely on the front end. I'm making note of that myself because this is a great system. So now we're into the R in trim, which is making this thing repeatable. So every client job site visit, every dealership visit, I want to walk through the same couple of steps in my head ahead of time, knowing that I'm still going to have to pivot as things unfold, as that unique conversation rolls out. But I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of, what are the 4 or 5 things that I want to make sure I'm taking care of, or that I research, or that I do in this visit. So, what would you say are some good things to do? You mentioned one of them, which is to keep track of any changes. So, to review changes that are happening in the industry, to think how might this be affecting this dealership. What are some other things that would be really great best practices for salespeople to keep a track of on the front end to make sure that they're executing in their meeting?
Right. So sometimes the people that you're connecting with when you arrive at the dealership are not the same, right? And some of them are
Uh,
sitting at different levels. So just knowing who they are, connecting with it, just connecting that with them on whatever level they're at, and knowing who they are. And then you can move into the consistently repeatable things. For us, it's basically talking about, hey, look, this is the unit. These are the features. It's the benefits. Here's the selling points. Here's the objections. Here's the moves that you can make, right? And it's, hey, let's start on the outside. Let's go to the inside. Let's work our way through this thing. But before we get to the product, we address the person. So we know the person, and then once you know them, we start with our story, which means, hey, I know you now. I want to make sure you know me. And even if it is somebody that you've told before, all you do is you give a rolled up version because it's a reinforcement. It's consistency. It's checking the boxes. It's like, who is nuCamp? Who is Jason? Who is Andy? Well, I'm somebody who I'm going to care genuinely. I'm going to put you ahead of myself. I'm going to work my tail off, and I'm always going to do the right thing. That's who I am. That's who we are. And it's imperative you remember that and you know that. Are we good? All right. Now let's take a look at the product.
And so I love this: address the person before the product, check in with them, what's going on in their lives, what's changed for them, what's changed for them in their job, what changed for them personally. Start with the story, talk about the things that make us different. If I'm that far along, and again, this all it is going to look unique actually for every single individual that we meet with, but I want to make sure that we at least have the building blocks in place so that as we navigate the uniqueness of every conversation, we at least have mile markers along the way. We know what direction we're headed in. So if I've got address the person, start with the story, what are the other maybe 2 or 3 things that I want to make sure happen in this meeting to justify the time and cost it took to get me there?
Yeah. So after you're going through the product, right? Um, you've made your presentations. You've made your connections. What is sales all about, right? It's all about closing. It's all about the ask and pulling it over the line. So at the end, you need that decision maker in the room. Several of the people that you've met with to that point, they're the ones on the front lines for the dealership, but they actually have no say per se. So you need to huddle back up with that decision maker on the end. They need to know, even sometimes they're not there during the presentation. So they just need to know that what you've done. Obviously for us to go out and visit, the dealer recognizes, I've told my guys all the time, I was like, sometimes it's not about what happens at the visit, it's that you visited.
Yeah.
And they realize that, like, okay, look, you took the time, you took the money, you came out, you met my guys, you asked them about their life, you shared the product. Now they can sell it better for me, for you, so on and so forth. I appreciate that. Now, what do you need? Because before they, and lots of times they don't want to ask, what do you need? But they need to be prepped in a way that they feel that. Because before we want them to ask them that, we will ask, before we want them to ask that of us, we will ask that of them. So it's really just decision maker identification, reinforcement of the connection and the investment, asking them what we can do, and then, hey, this is what you could do for us.
And you'd mentioned something early on a couple of times, the idea of the biggest thing we can do in this meeting is to build relationship. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think that as I've grown in sales, the idea of the sale itself being the best indicator of success has shifted, and now it's how much have I served? Because I'm sure you've had this as well, Scott. Got customers that were just not worth your time. Like if you could wind back the clock, you'd say, I would have rather not had that piece of business. I didn't serve them by making them a customer. They weren't ready for it. It wasn't the best fit. They didn't understand what we could be bringing to the table. So I want to make sure that the final piece of this repeatable process has to do with relationship. And it might be, and a lot of salespeople do this, owning the next step. To say that of everything we've talked about, I know you promised to do this, but here's what I'm going to do as a salesperson. How would that look for your salespeople?
Yeah. So it's asking them what their need is. We've got a variety of types of dealers, right? Mom and pop shops, dealers that might sell 20 units a year, versus, multi-location, multi-region dealers. And, they might be selling, 300 units. Their needs are going to differ. And you've got to identify what that is. And so you open the door to that conversation. Once you identify what's important to them, then you can better serve them. Again, you have to put the time in to identify what that is first.
This is amazing. So I'm capturing, then leave with a way that you can help them specifically, a customized way that you can provide value to them. And of course, if that's delivering your product or service, that's great. That's a great top objective. But as I'm sure your folks have learned over the years, showing up to a dealership doesn't guarantee a sale. But if I don't leave and provide value to them after the fact, then I'm just one in a bunch of nameless faces. But if I'm the person that's partnered with them to make them more successful, of course they're going to want to take my calls. They're going to want to do business with me in the future, even if we can't get it done today. So great couple of repeatable steps. Now the iron trim is what we had to learn on the battlefield very quickly, because the environment changed so fast out there, Scott, that if we didn't improve what we did, then we weren't bringing everybody home at the end of the next mission. Well, sales is the same way, because our competitors, of course, are constantly looking for ways to capture that bit of market share that we're holding on to. So when we talk about improving a system, I want a way for your salespeople to be able to leave a dealership meeting and ask themselves, after maybe a couple of weeks or every month or every quarter, how do I take this repeatable process that Scott has built for me and make it better? Now, one idea is to look at how many follow-ups am I receiving after this? How many times are we receiving inbound calls from our dealers after we've departed? Because that's going to indicate the strength of the relationship, the problems that we're helping them solve. What are some ways that you would like your salespeople to improve the way that they're arriving at a dealer site, doing what they do, and then making sure that that conversation and relationship continues afterwards?
Yeah, I think, look, we're all human, right? So sometimes you can get a little road weary. And, the first quarter is really where the guys are hitting it hard, and it shows. It's, 3, 4 days shows. The fall, we start to see shows again. And then they have lives. They were not hired or asked to be road warriors when they came in. We've got 68 dealers or 105 sites or so. So it's tough. And it's just like, guys, hey, look, this is about being resilient. You guys are the fuel for the rest of the team. You've got to go in there. You've got to be consistent. You need to understand what is the dynamic that's occurring at that specific dealership. You just can't be frustrated that they're not buying, and and just not stop. It's really as simple as that. We're all inclined. I don't know how in tune you are with our industry per se, but it really started taking a nosedive about 12 months ago for most of the industry. We're in a little unique position where we were saved from some of that stuff for another 6 to 8 months. So we were able to build. But now it's sort of caught up to us as well. And the industry is still sort of down. We're building more than most of the industry is. However, sales are tough. Those guys are in the grind. They're not being order takers and visitors. They are grinding for those sales. So now is the time. The environment's changed. Now is the time more than ever to get back to basics. You don't slack off. You check the boxes. You invest in relationship, and then you will see the fruit of those labors.
I love that. And of course, with a system, it becomes so much easier to check the boxes. That's why we used them in the military, why so many salespeople use them now. And then I love the idea also of improving by, and this is something you and I chatted about before we went live, was the idea of prioritizing. So if I've got a couple of dealers that I'm doing the majority of my business through, the majority could be 20%, maybe the rest of it is spread out a bunch of smaller dealerships. But if I've got some that are making up the bulk of my business, I want to make sure that if I can't make it to anywhere else, I make it to them, or I bring them to me. So I'm going to make sure that I include, absolutely prioritize that next set of visits, because we've learned from salespeople, if I know I'm probably going to have a better result from that dealer visit, I'm going to be more excited about going. right? If it's just, I haven't seen this dealer in 3 months, but they haven't bought from us in 3 years, well, you know, how much passion am I bringing to the table there? So if we've got good trigger, we've got a couple of great repeatable steps, ways to improve this, which is awesome to make sure it's consistently getting better. Now, the final piece of this is the M and trim, which is making this measurable. I want to make sure that if I'm taking the time to check the boxes before I step onto my dealership lot, I'm walking through a consistent process. That's going to take some mental energy that I might have otherwise burned thinking about sports or thinking about whatever else I had on my mind. I want to make sure that I'm measuring this to make sure it's successful. So if we're talking specifically about the mission plan of developing better relationships with our dealers on our job sites or with whoever you're visiting on your job site, for any of the listeners out there right now, relationship is key. Our mission plan is not just to drive more business through the pipeline, but that's to happen through relationships. So I want ways to measure the effectiveness of how well I'm building relationships. Would you recommend your salespeople measure that by number of engagement after the dealer visit? Should it be by just gross orders put through? Should it be by inquiries after the fact? What are some good ways for us to measure relationship building in your industry?
Yeah, short term, it would absolutely just be, hey, what's the cadence of contact after that? Have they been
Okay.
reaching out more? What do those conversations look like? From a long term perspective, you're absolutely measuring on volume. We're
Mhm.
talking about sales. At the end of the
Yep.
day, no matter what the approach, no matter what the guise of the sales is, it's got to convert. So it's both of those, just long term, short term.
That's amazing. All right, I love this. So we've got a trigger, making it repeatable, ways to improve this, and ways to measure it both in the short and the long term. And that way we can do something in sales that, Scott, so many salespeople struggle with, which is to measure leading indicators. We're all focused on those lagging indicators. How many contracts did I get signed? How many quotes did I get out the door? But it's all the work, as you and I well know, that happens before that really dictates sales success. So, great sales system anybody can use that's driving that on-site visit that wants to develop better relationships. Thanks so much for helping us build that. Now, for folks that want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about nuCamp, where do they go? Because obviously, as a family-run business, you're supporting the values that help make this country great. So I'd recommend anybody just reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn like right now. But what are the ways that you would like us to get deeper into your world?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, I'm there, but just search Scott Hubble. My purpose of being on LinkedIn is to actually just inspire and uplift
Mm,
others. I'm not necessarily there with any zingers or looking to gin up business, frankly. I'm really just looking there to empower some people and have them look at things in life a little bit differently. I'm not saying that I view it the best,
mhm.
but I think I've been broken so many times throughout my years that I've developed a good balance. And, I'd like to just share that perspective with people. But on a larger scale, look, www.nucamp
Mhm.
rv.com. That's spelled NU as an umbrella, CAMPRV.com. Check out what we got going. Again, world's largest manufacturer of teardrop trailers. We do truck campers. We do a really cool, like UK inspired, all fiberglass unit called the Barefoot. This company is built on core values of caring genuinely, service over self, always doing the right thing, and hard work. We love to just share that story with our dealers, with our consumers, and thanks for letting me share it with you.
It was our pleasure, sir. Living out of values is probably something we could have you back on the show to talk about because it ties so much into sales, integrity, trust. I mean, it's all of it, really. So, thanks so much for willing to come on here and share the challenges that your industry is facing. That's great of you to do that. Not very many people can. So, it's awesome that you've got enough faith in what you're doing and in your values to know that we're doing the right things. This is going to work out for us. So for all the salespeople out there watching the show right now, make sure you're following us on YouTube. We've got a channel there with every single one of these great conversations archived, absolutely free, available to you. And of course, for sales systems that we build out of these, make sure you're checking those out at bulletproofselling.us. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere the podcast can be found, check the box, read a review, write a review. Let people know that they don't have to rely on hope in how they sell. And thank you so much again, Scott, for willing to come out here and give back to the sales community. Let's get out there together and make selling bulletproof.
Thank you.